and welcome to the pod. I'm your host, Grace. And with us here, we have Dan, who's going to teach us all about how to become a Glastonbury stage programmer. Thank you so much for coming in. So please tell us what that is.
As a Glastonbury venue manager, I run a stage called the Rum Shack, which is in the late night area called the Common. So it's one of about 90 plus stages at the best festival in the world ever. And basically what it means is I scout, book, program the artist lineup across 5 days. It's about 60 artists. Sometimes we run from 4 in the afternoon all the way till 6 in the morning. So I put together the team behind it. It has lots of different youth programs attached to it. So last year I was managing a team of about 30 people, plus about another 60, 70 artists on top of that. So yeah, that's what I do.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work,
but good fun.
I love it. It's a dream job. I've been going to Glastonbury since about 2003. And then I got asked to run a stage in 2011. So I'd already had quite a lot of Glastonburys under my belt and realised quite how significant that is. So when someone came along and offered me the chance to run a venue, obviously it's a dream job.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love to hear about a dream job. But let's go back to the beginning and tell us what you wanted to be when you were growing up.
When I was growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to be. And this is the thing, because I didn't really get careers advice around creative industry roles. I didn't really know what was out there. I think if there was anything that I wanted to be, it was a journalist, because I love words and I love the idea of observing and reporting and journalism, up until which point I realized how much journalists get paid. And this was all the way back in the 80s. And I was like, yeah, I might try and do something else. I guess other things that I contemplated from quite early was just being involved in music. It wasn't something I thought that I could have as a viable career path. I'm from a British Chinese family. The expectations is you're doing business or accounting or maths or something like that. And whilst I was good at that, it wasn't really catching my kind of attention in the same way. And so when I went to university, I really fell into the music scene. And that's partly, there's something deeper about British Chinese upbringings, being a second generation immigrant and expectations of you. And so when I got to university, it felt like a time where I could really express myself and try things that I really wanted to. Perhaps to the kind of counter to the expectations of my parents and the investment they put in me to get to university. And I had a lot of fun and I was being very creative. And essentially I became a drum and bass MC.
That's cool.
Yeah, I did that for quite a few years. Prior to that, I was a garage MC just for fun, kind of when UK garage was first emerging. So I guess in terms of music, I'd always, even from young, I had always seen myself as someone who could curate music, whether it was making mixtapes, whether it was, I had one of those old school stereos with a little pinhole microphone in. And I guess that was my first foray into creating with music. I would basically play radio hosts whilst I would record my favourite pop tunes.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, and so I kind of realised from young that I loved curating music in different ways and different forms. At the time, I felt quite unusual. As a Chinese person growing up in London, I didn't really meet anyone like me, and yet I was into pop like Britney Spears and George Michael, but I was also into heavy emerging UK garage scene, kind of in the early mid 90s. I was into reggae and dancehall and what bass music there was growing up in London in that time. So I guess I've always wanted to be some kind of curator of music, perhaps in a John Peel, David Rodigan kind of vein.
Wow. I love that you really found your creativity when you went to uni. That's where it really felt like possible.
Yeah, I feel like what's interesting now, because I do a lot of work, for example, with youth music as a consultant, looking at creative careers and barriers to and inclusive creative industries that we all feel to some degree. And I guess it was something which sorry, what was the question again?
No, it was just saying that I love that you found like that creativity when you felt like it was possible at uni.
That's right, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, and I feel like it was an opportunity to really explore things through, university societies. I mean, truth be told, we went to a lot of raves in the first year of university, as some might do. And we were like, why don't we put on a drum and bass event? And there already was one. It'd been going for 1 year at the time. And so we got involved in that, and they didn't have an MC. And I was like, well, I used to MC. I write, I rap. I'll give it a go. No one else is doing it. And then that kind of stuck, and I did that for about a decade of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that you're like, I'll just give it a go. Like, why not? So when you were done at uni, what was your next steps after that?
So I left university with the semblance of a degree by the skin of my teeth. And I came back down to London, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was still MCing drum and bass, but it's quite a closed industry. And so I started working for Transport for London, actually, just doing temping roles for a number of years. I worked in accounts, I worked in property development, I worked in HR. At one point, I was investigating complaints to bus drivers. But I come from hip hop culture, and so the hustle mentality has always been in me. So this was kind of around MySpace days. So I would be at my job, it was relatively boring. I found I could probably do my 40-day week in about 20 hours. And so I would sneakily spend the other 15, 20 hours basically just building my MySpace and kind of connecting with people, other music community, in a way that had never really happened before, apart from MSN. So, and MSN was a little bit more for producers who were sending tracks to each other, and I wasn't a producer. So it felt like a space where I could put up freestyles and put up raps and actually get some. It wasn't really attention I was looking for, it was just an outlet, really. And so when I got to university, so when I was working for Transport for London, I was kind of slowly just developing this thing without really knowing where I was going to take it. I just knew it's what my body needed to do, because I'm from that space.
I love that. Like, it's the thing that was like filling your cup when your job was earning you the money, but you needed to feel like your passion. And that's what you were doing. Absolutely.
And, I spend a lot of time working with young people, especially around kind of creative entrepreneurship and freelancing. And one thing I tell everybody is get another job. It's not because I don't believe in you. It's not because you don't believe in yourself. It's because the creative industries is inherently difficult and bumpy, and you might have loads of work at some point and none at another, and actually developing your craft or the thing that you want to do whilst having financial security on some level might seem boring, and to people who are particularly creative might seem like you're selling your soul or you're not doing what you're meant to be doing. But that's the ego-led thing, really. That's your ego telling you you have to be an artiste, in inverted commas. But in truth, if you want a career working in the creative industries, you have to do what you need to do to kind of spread your chips, as it were. And so part of that was about having a job, which, I developed a lot of skills then. I was admin, I was managing offices, I was learning how to communicate with senior management, I was hosting meetings, and all of this stuff which seems boring, turns out I was really good at. And that had a huge impact on how I manage artists now, and how I run a company is the ability to be organized and look after other people.
Yeah, that's super important, isn't it? Like, it may not be your dream job, but you are taking bits from that towards your dream job.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is hugely important.
Yeah.
So you built that all up and you're on MySpace, but you're also, working your day job. And then what happens after that?
So I was putting on events with various collectives in Northwest London. I remember a friend of mine, well, someone who would become a friend of mine at the time, I had no idea who they were, put up an advert on Gumtree. And it said, do you want to join a collective? We're putting on music, we're influenced by this, we don't really know what we want to be, and we're based in Northwest London. I was like, great, let's meet them. They were called Jamming Crew. And, it was slightly born out of the legacy of, kind of 4 Hero days, Talking Loud, that kind of kind of acid jazz, mid-90s era, and that kind of cohort had grown up and created an event called Jammin', and I joined them. And we started putting on events around London. And I got the bug for putting on events, found I really enjoyed it, and fundamentally really enjoyed bringing people into shared spaces and then presenting them with something that we really believed in. And so eventually in 2009, I decided to create my own company, which was called Lyrics Organics. And it was founded on the intersection, or my passion and belief for the relationship between hip hop, spoken word, and folk music. Because that's what I was born in London. I would be going out to gigs maybe 5, 6, 7 nights a week. I was really passionate about live music. And then there came a point where I was like, I can do this better than what I'm seeing. And so we started it in a pub in northwest London called Paradise by way of Kensal Green. And we had about 30 people turn up to the first event. And it was great. The second event, I brought on one of my friends at the time. He was Ed Sheeran. He is Ed Sheeran, still to this day, very much. And we got quite fortunate because my talent for scouting and finding talent was embodied in this one guy. And we did a lot of shows together. And as that developed, he blew up quite quickly. That got us some kind of people were clocking our relationship with Ed. Not that we were the only people. He was, gigging all around the country, but we had a strong relationship with him. And one thing led to another. We started working with other artists like Akala and K Tempest and Maverick Sabre, people who would go on to become huge. Michael Kiwanuka, who ended up winning a Mercury Prize, I think, in 2020. So we started kind of building up a catalogue of people who would then blow up. And so we started to gather a bit of a name for ourselves. And then I guess the next big leap was in 2011. We were invited to Glastonbury. Now, the short version of the story is that one of the drivers behind setting up Lyrics Organics was believing that music not only could bring together people but could bring social change. And one way we would do that was to make all of our gigs, all the profits were donated to a charity. And there's a lot of charity gigs, but we thought it was important to be intentional and work closely with a charity who we believed in. And at the time it was Médecins Sans Frontières, so Doctors Without Borders, who are an incredible humanitarian aid organisation. And we worked really closely with them because they spend about 85% of their donations on the front line, whereas the majority of other charities maybe might spend about 30% because they've got such huge overheads, marketing, offices, campaigns, all of that kind of stuff. And so it felt like, and we knew that we could really make an impact with MSF. And it turned out that MSF were invited to Glastonbury one year. And we were like, hey, why don't we make it into a stage? And that was our kind of entry point into Glastonbury. It was a fallow year or something the following year, or we weren't involved the following year. And in 2013, then got invited to, I got personally invited to run a stage, which was called the Rum Shack in the same area called the Common. And that's where I remain today.
It's incredible because to me that sounds like the biggest job, and I know it will be, but what exactly goes into running a stage at Glastonbury?
It's kind of mad. I mean, firstly, it still feels like a pinch me moment. Like it doesn't feel real. And every year it feels like not only tremendous privilege, which we take seriously, and what do you do with that privilege, but also kind of surreal because I do a lot of youth work, I do a lot of youth development, and a lot of those young people end up on our stages, and some of them blow up or have blown up, and others not. And actually the Rum Shack becomes a really unusual space because there's an equity where people who are emerging are sharing the stage with people who are headlining much bigger stages that same year at Glastonbury Festival. So in terms of how it works, programming the stage takes a very long time. I tend to start in about November, December time. The festival's in June. So between November, December, all the way up until maybe about March, it's just conversations. And it's a bit like having lots of chess pieces and working out where to put them all, because I'm quite unusual as a programmer. I purposefully exist outside of the music industry because I find the music industry difficult, complex, toxic. And I've always, by virtue of being British Chinese, have existed as an outlier. So I feel very comfortable on the outside. And so I say that because a lot of programmers work closely with music agents who have a roster of music of a certain genre, and a programmer will say, I want UK garage DJs, I want grime MCs, I want that. Tell me who's your best, and then they'll slot it in. Mm-hmm. But for me, I have a very clear vision of what I want for that stage for that year. So as an example, one year we've had a whole day full of South Asian artists, another year a whole day full of Southeast Asian artists. There's an underlying thread of Latin American artist exchange that we've had for over 15 years. So whatever that kind of theme is, I then work to that. And then the way I make my life difficult for myself is, rather than just approaching one or a handful of agents to work with me on that, I will really earmark every kind of slot and think about the dynamic of that slot. And what I mean by that is thinking, as someone who's been to Glastonbury loads, what will someone be thinking at 1 a.m. as they're passing a covered, tented venue? And what does it need to draw them in? Because at a festival, it's very different from like a city venue, because you don't have a captive audience. So if they don't like it, within 5 minutes they'll leave. They'll vote with their feet. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means you have to think around that and work harder as a programmer. And so I will, I guess, find who my top target is and then book each slot depending on the dynamic that shifts by booking that one artist. Now, I can have like an ideal lineup, but it never really works like that. One major problem I have with programming the stage at Glastonbury is other stages. So I have very high ambitions, and I will often think about booking and who's going to blow up. If I'm thinking about a show in November, who's going to be popping when it comes to June, or maybe a little bit later? Who's going to have a career-defining moment at Glastonbury? So I'm not looking to book someone who is hot yet.
Yeah.
I'm looking to help them become hot. So as an example, Koji Radical, who has become a huge artist since, we booked him in, I think, 2015, off the back of a show that I saw at the ICA. And no one really knew who he was then, but I had the faith that he could fill a 1,000 person venue just by his energy. He could draw people in at whatever o'clock it was. And so I guess in terms of what it is and how I work, a lot of it is based on a very pure instinct about live music, and I love that. As soon as it starts becoming about agents trying to push artists on me or who I should be booking, I'll go the opposite way. Mm-hmm. So it becomes a bit of a chess game of kind of relationships, communication, how, which artists are likely to get sniped by a bigger stage from me. Also, one major challenge of what I do is I don't get enough tickets to give to the artist to book for my stage.
What does that mean? What
it means is, ordinarily, if I'm working at another festival aside from Glastonbury, let's say your band needs 10 tickets, 6 in your band and 4 for staff or partners or whatever, I'll give you 10 tickets. Mm-hmm. But at Glastonbury, because tickets are so hard to come by, they're like gold dust, they sell out in 20 minutes. 200,000 tickets sell out in 20 minutes without a lineup. So you can imagine that everyone and their dog wants to get a ticket. Mm-hmm. So not only are people trying to hustle for that ticket, but also I don't have 6 tickets to give to your band, let alone that extra 4 tickets to give to your crew or your partners. Yeah. I'm working with 3 tickets. So how do I get a 6-piece band in with 3 tickets? So then the conundrum becomes, how can I share this band with another stage and the politics and the negotiations that happens with that.
I can't believe how much you managed to make that happen.
It's mad.
It's mad.
It's really eccentric.
It's also so wonderful to hear you talk about it, because you obviously take it so seriously, because you've got that skill. Is that skill that's something you've had to learn, or do you think it just comes very naturally?
I would be big-headed if I said it comes naturally, but I feel it in my bones.
Really?
Yeah, like that genuinely.
Amazing.
I know exactly how a night is going to pan out months before. Like, I can literally tell you, if there was a Glastonbury in 2026, I could tell you exactly what the trajectory of that night in terms of the crowd moving in and out, which point they're going to, whoop and cheer, and the camera phones will be in the air, and the other times where I'll lose them. So part of it is about mentally visualizing and mapping the journey of a night. So yeah, I guess it comes from part nature, part nurture.
It's like so incredible, because it's such a niche skill, but you've crafted it into something that everybody can enjoy.
Yeah, and I think if there's anything innate about it, I think it's about understanding people. And understanding people in that context, and just being so overly committed to live music for decades for no reason. Like, it's not, having told you that I sit outside the music industry, I'm not chasing like the music industry career ladder or whatever you want to call it. I'm just doing it because I love it. Like, I love seeing the reaction on people's faces. I love seeing the surprise when people are sticking around for a Koji Radical who they've never seen before. So yeah, I feel like it is something which is, it's deeply entrenched in me. And whilst I can and I do teach it and share that knowledge, it takes a particular type of person to have that kind of understanding of people, as well as the music industry understanding of the artist and programming and production and all of that kind of stuff.
Most definitely. When they approached you, obviously that's huge and exciting and scary. Was there ever a moment where you were like, I'm not sure I can do this? Or were you all in from the beginning?
I get it every year.
Really?
Grace, like, I have imposter syndrome all of the time. I don't have imposter syndrome in the same way that I'm very confident in myself. But I do have a thing where I'm like, why isn't someone else doing this job? Like, everyone else would want to do this job. So many people are DJs these days, and it's simply because people are so adept at curating music. So I imagine a lot of people think they can do my job, and go for it. Like, I'm, great. The more programmers, the better. But it's something where, it's also partly about the community that we build around us. So whilst we're here talking about the programming of the stage, actually of equal importance is the community that we build backstage. So I do a lot of lecturing around event management and music business, ironically, and I have a kind of a mental black book where I notice young people who have a particular talent. And that's kind of how I live my life, with a kind of like a scouting eye, I guess. And the backstage team at the Rum Shack is about 90% populated by former students of mine that I've met in workshops or at university or wherever. And I then kind of make a mental note to find a spot for them. And it may not happen for years. And many people may drop out of the industry at that point, and I've kind of missed my opportunity. But I really believe in the right time, the right person in the right place, and they all have to line up. And we have an incredible team at the Rum Shack, and also unusually we constantly rotate because I don't feel it's fair. Another thing that happens a lot with festival stages is they have one team and they stick with that team. And then a reason why at certain festivals you'll see the same kind of lineup recycled is because they've got safe and they've got comfortable. And I don't enjoy seeing that. I don't enjoy paying money to go see the same acts that I've seen year on year at the same festival. And part of that comes from a belief in rotating the backstage team as well as the artists. So we typically, not always, but we typically tell artists we won't book you 2 years in a row because it's just not fair. Everyone wants to play Glastonbury. So it's only fair to, give people that opportunity because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. The same thing happens backstage. Not, we don't rotate people every year because that would be, counterintuitive to kind of fluidity of the organization. But we do put a cap on how long you can work at the Rum Shack because we need that freshness, we need that vitality, we need that that kind of new input, I guess. And so, it's difficult to kind of maintain a role like that when you make life a little bit difficult for yourself, kind of through your value system. But it really does show, and people talk about the Rum Shack, in ways I never imagined. Like, to put this in context, when the Rum Shack first started, it was just a stage and a bar that sold rum. And we put on some like acoustic acts and bluegrass music, and it was a little bit token. And then I realized that we could push this a little bit harder once I got my feet under the table. And so it got to a point where we were able to prove our credibility and our kind of scouting chops, if you like. And so as time went by, we got more trust from the heads of the field, essentially, Steve and Kerry. And the more the years went on, the more they believed in me and the more freedom I got backstage, on stage, and around the kind of the youth programs that we started developing around the Rum Shack as well.
I think being able to speak up for that when you maybe already have that kind of imposter feeling, it's a scary thing to do, but bringing in that extra kind of passion of yours, it's going to be changing people's lives, because to have the youth have that on their CV is going to be pretty crazy.
Yeah, and honestly, it's so gratifying because I have some of the former students who then went on to work at the Rum Shack, who then went on to go do other things, are now running like multinational creative organizations, are like heads within the music industry, are doing really big things. And some of them are not even working in the music industry. And that's the other thing, is that actually we don't always, hire, if that's the right word, people who are from the music industry. Again, it's that diversity of skill sets, which makes it unusual. So whenever people experience the Rum Shack in whatever direction they're coming from, they really sense that community, which sounds like such a cliched word, but at the Rum Shack and in Glastonbury, it's very much that.
Yeah, that is amazing. I think it would be a dream for anyone. So to give those opportunities and be always remembering those people you want to bring in is adding workload for sure, but it's an amazing thing to do. Do you think that the Rum Shack's just going to keep evolving and keep getting bigger? Is that the plan?
Well, bigger maybe in terms of, not in terms of capacity, because that has a kind of glass ceiling on it, just by virtue of where we are. Should I do a bit of a sidebar? Yeah. So basically, the Common, which is the late night area we're in, is the southeast corner. The southeast corner is called the Naughty Corner. The Naughty Corner is so called because once upon a time, it's where all the traveller community were kind of exiled to. In the 80s, 90s, there's a lot of kind of friction between the traveller community, the hippie community, and Michael Levis, the owner of Glastonbury. And long story short, when things got a little bit too heavy, they said to the traveller community, here, have these fields that aren't being used. And that's what became the southeast corner. Back then, there wasn't really a late night area. And so the traveller community kind of grew into this, this area. And as a result, it's become the most unique and kind of identifiable Glastonbury's not corporate, but the least kind of influenced by kind of the wider industry. And so, it feels like a place where we can keep growing in terms of what we do, but not necessarily the capacity. So as an example, in 2024, I kind of hit a personal glass ceiling. I was like, I've been doing this for whatever it was, 12 years or something, and we've achieved a lot, like way more than we thought we would ever achieve. So I looked at my team and we were like, well, what can we do which breaks the mold and does something a little bit different? And initially we were like, well, why don't we do a youth development program? And the answer was, well, we're already that's what we do anyway. So yes, it would be easy, but we're not really breaking the mold there. And there was some EDI funding that came up from Glastonbury, and the question we asked ourselves was, what is the most important thing we could do? Because we have this position of influence and relative privilege now. And we decided to set up a program called Levin in the Field. And Levin in the Field is a festival trainee program for the deaf and disabled community, because the barriers that are faced by me getting a job at Glastonbury or even buying a ticket at Glastonbury are nothing compared to the deaf and disabled community, who, ticketing, travelling, camping, all of these minutiae of the Glastonbury experience are incredibly difficult for someone who's deaf or disabled. And so essentially in 2024, we decided to grow by, I guess, laterally rather than upwards, by building this training program, which if we thought we were making a change with the Rum Shack, we then realised soon after setting up Levin in the Field that we are changing everything, in so much as the way that the creative industry sees the disabled community. Now, don't get me wrong, there's loads of incredible work that people are doing. We are newcomers into this. Attitude is Everything, being the kind of major organisation, but there's many, many organisations that we're working with now who do incredible stuff with the disabled community. But a little bit like the outsider looking in again, we realised that we could do a lot around accessibility that other people hadn't really considered yet. And so part of that was wrapping the amount of care and support that we give a youth development program. We work with refugees, we work with homeless community, we work with marginalised young people, we work with people who are kicked out of school, colleges, hard people, or hard to reach people. And we give disabled community the same level of support as we do there. And what makes that different, because something I haven't mentioned fully, is that a lot of the work that I do is around youth work and youth development, running workshops and creative workshops. And so when you apply that kind of methodology or that approach into Glastonbury, it stands out, because you've got the kind of banner name of Glastonbury, but you've got the level of care and attention to detail to the people in an area that people often willfully overlook. And so, I'm tremendously proud of Levin in the Field and all the team behind it. We did it again last year, and it's been so successful, we're now building it into a company as we speak.
So that them opportunities are at other places as well, not just at the Rum Shack?
Exactly. So, for example, we've recently taken over managing access at Brockwell Live, which is the series of festivals that include Mighty Hoopla, which is a huge queer pop festival, Field Day, Cross the Tracks, Wide Awake, which was headlined by Kneecap last year. And City Splash, which is one of my favourite reggae dancehall festivals. And so, it basically means that same principle that we applied to Rum Shack, which was let's find opportunities for the people who most deserve it, we're now doing on a whole nother scale, but almost independent of Glastonbury, which has, just kind of opened the world out and the opportunities out. So, it's great. And I don't know what happens next. This feels like a beast. This could go on and on.
Really?
Yeah.
All that extra work, but it's so worth it, because what an amazing impact that's going to have.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's eye-watering. If we thought we were having that impact on a level of working with just young creators generally, you're talking about people who are, so one guy, Will, is partially deaf, partially blind. Freya, who's now a co-director on Level in the Field, she is partially deaf. We've had people in power wheelchairs, people who, so many, such kind of diversity of kind of access requirements. It literally changes people's lives, and I kind of hate saying that out loud because it sounds so kind of self-congratulatory, but they're telling us directly. And we're talking about people. So here's an example. Last year we had an amazing young woman called Claire Taggart. She is a Paralympian for Team GB, and she had been, touring the world with Team GB, playing an incredible kind of bowling-esque sport called Boccia. And as a result of her being on Level in the Field last summer, she quit her job to become an accessibility consultant for live events. Mm-hmm. She loves live music, but never thought that was an opportunity. There were other people in her same cohort who had never been to a festival before because they couldn't go to a festival, because they didn't feel supported or safe, or that they had what they needed. And so you're talking about people who couldn't even go to festivals, who are now working in festivals. So yeah, it feels incredibly impactful.
That's game changing. And I think it's so wonderful to go in and be like, they didn't even know it's possible, and now they're doing it already. Because that's quite quickly.
Yeah, it's really accelerated. I mean, it's remarkable because, it took me God knows how long to start working at festivals. Mm-hmm. And yet, I mean, and there's a risk in it, because once they meet Level in the Field, they don't know any different. They feel like every other types of accessible support or festival should reach the benchmark that Level in the Field set, mm-hmm. which, if I'm honest, isn't realistic, because the world isn't like that, and the creative industries and festivals isn't like that. In fact, that's exactly why it's set up. So there's an element of risk in so much as, you kind of fast track them into this really super supported space. And then the question becomes, how do you maintain that level of support when they're not with you?
Yeah, of course.
Or how do you build in the advocacy so that they know how to advocate for themselves? And so that becomes the next challenge, which is, okay, well, we can support you up until this point, but what can we do to ensure that you have the independence to step further?
It's amazing.
Thank you.
It's incredible work. If somebody's listening and they think, I want to do what this guy does, what would be your words of wisdom or piece of advice?
Someone told me an amazing piece of advice last week, which was start anywhere and follow it everywhere.
Nice.
Because I had no idea what I was doing. I literally just started doing a thing because I loved it and I believed in it. It wasn't because I thought I was going to get paid for it. That's why I had a full-time job. Start anywhere, follow it everywhere means just trust your instincts. If something feels right, then follow it through. Mm-hmm. If you then start getting paid for it, then chase it harder. And you may find that reaches a dead end, and then people get either disinterested or kind of despondent because the creative industries isn't for them, or this was the blockage that I expected, and they may be right, but follow it everywhere. In my head, how I've interpreted it is follow the dead ends. In 2024, I co-led a piece of research for youth music called the Industry Connect Report about barriers to the industry. And one thing we realized after numerous consultations with hundreds of people, organizations, young people, practitioners, was that this idea of the pipeline or the ladder or the kind of pyramid, if you do this and then that, you'll get to there, is a lie. We've been sold a lie. Higher education institutions sell the lie because they need to sell places. The music industry sells the lie because they need the highest amount of candidates, and they need to have the the best bottom line. Industry, by definition, serves the economic imperatives. But actually, when you look at the pyramid and you turn it on its side, you realize that the way that most people navigate the creative industries is much more like a maze. And so therefore you always hit dead ends. Really the question becomes what you do at that dead end. Do you give up or do you try and find a new route? And so a lot of the work that I'm doing with youth music at the moment, along with my kind of partner in crime, Kate McBain, is how do we present young creatives with a roadmap that isn't actually a map, i.e. there is no defined start and there's no defined destination, but what we can tell you, it's a squiggly line all the way through. So we talk about this idea of nests and flight paths, nests being a temporary destination. So I might go to a workshop at the Roundhouse, for example, where I've worked before, or I might do a workshop with a youth centre, or I might go get a job at H&M and a part-time job as an usher, and all of these weird things that we call different hats. Actually, each of the hats, each of the nests have different skills and experience that you collect. And then you fly from one nest to the next nest with those new skills, and you bring those new skills to the next nest, and then you extract's maybe not the right word, you learn new skills, and you accumulate this all the way through your life. So the reason I talk about dead ends is because of this idea of this maze, and actually it's a much more fluid process that we journey through life. And I think it's really important to recognize that, because that's why so many people are leaving the creative industries, is because they don't have the careers advice that's suitable, because teachers don't know their options. If you say, I want to work in the music industry, most people assume that that's because you want to become an artist. They don't know that there's thousands of other different jobs roles that are totally viable, and in some ways more viable than being an artist itself. So, if you're a music artist, for example, you can also become a content creator, or you can also become, I know an amazing music artist who is also a PA for like really high level executives. So, it's all about finding that balance, and also not being discouraged by the walls that have been put up in front of you.
That was amazing. Like, inspiring.
Thank you.
And I know this is going to have like such a great impact on so many people, because that's exactly why we're doing the pod. You're right, people don't mention these jobs early on because people don't know they exist. So this is going to be so lovely for people to hear and get inspired by.
Good, I hope so.
100%. Well, I can't thank you enough. That was amazing.
Thank you, Grace.
And I really appreciate it. And you're going to be incredible in everything you do.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank
you for having me.
Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure that you like and subscribe so we can continue to make these and keep teaching people how to become A. Thank you.